Hey guys, so today I want to continue my Contemporary Techniques for Composers series, and I want to talk about jet whistle. I have made my Contemporary Techniques 101 video about jet whistle. I will link that in the cards in the description. If you don't know what these series are, I have two series on Contemporary Techniques, clearly. Contemporary Techniques 101 is about the pedagogical theory behind it, how to learn it, how to practice it, what are the difficulties about playing it. If you are a composer, I think these videos are helpful in that you have an idea of what you're asking your player to do. You have a better idea of what it takes to create these sounds, so you might have a better idea of how to put them into a piece. And obviously, as a performer, you get to learn how to do them and how to practice them. This series is aimed more at composers in terms of practical application of the sounds, notation, difficulty in terms of application in music, and for performers, it's more about being able to talk about the techniques, being able to talk to composers about it, being able to recognize it in a score and everything like that. So while they are kind of aimed performer-composer, I think there's some crossover. So now that we've gone through all of that, jet whistle. Jet whistle is a pretty inflexible technique. There aren't a ton of variations in sound, and there's not a ton of variations in dynamic. So I think the first point to make is that it's kind of an all or nothing technique. There is a little bit of leeway in that you can have some that are a little bit quieter, but overall it's going to be loud, and it's gonna be what you expect a jet whistle to sound like. There isn't really much you can do in tone manipulation, which is not true for a lot of other air sounds. Jet whistle is the most distinctive air sound, and it's not really included in the air sound category because it is so distinctive, but I mean, it is an air sound. That's the basis of the technique. The other thing is that it is very difficult to get an effective one on the low flutes. I talked a little bit about this in my Q&A video that was posted on Tuesday, but it's just the physics of the instrument. It's a bigger tube, so you can't focus the air the same way. And also in that video, I mentioned that in the instrument techniques on piccolo are no-go, which means that jet whistle is as well. Also, they don't sound great, in my opinion. If you can get enough air like running through a straight head joint alto, they sound super cool. Curved head joint altos don't work as well, and bass flute as well, because you have the curve and it's an even bigger tube. I'm sure if someone could get enough air through the tube of a bass flute, it would sound super cool. I am personally a 5'4", 120-pound human. I don't have lungs that big. Jet whistle also requires setup time. The same as tongue ram or any in the flute techniques have some delay. You do need to give the performer a few seconds to, one, get enough air into their system that they can create the sound, and two, roll the flute into their mouth so that they can create the sound. Good performers should only need a millisecond or two, but it's still something that you need to keep in mind. It's very, very difficult to go from like a long held note directly into a jet whistle. In some cases, it might be impossible, especially if you want one of these true big, full whooshing sounds. You need time to breathe before you can do that. So just make sure that you're placing them in a setting where the performer has a chance to get into it, and if you want them to play right after that, that they also have time to get out of it, because you've emptied your lungs, your flute is still in your mouth, so you need a chance to obviously recoup that air and reset the flute so that you can continue on. Again, that's true with all in the flute techniques, but because this one requires so much air, it also has a second of like catching your breath. The next thing is, it is a very, very taxing technique. And I've talked about this every time I've talked about jet whistle, and I will continue to talk about this every time I talk about jet whistle. If you've seen the technique video, you know that the way that jet whistle is created is essentially emptying your entire lung capacity into the flute all at once. What does that sound like? Hyperventilation. So, stacking jet whistles, having them back to back to back without a lot of rest period, is a really easy way to get your performer to pass out. I think I've told this story before, but at Orford a few summers ago, it wasn't me, but the other flutist who was there was asked to do 6 or 7 jet whistles in a row, and she got lightheaded and had to stop playing and take a break. And that was just in rehearsal when she wasn't really going all out. We ended up having to cut some of those jet whistles out just because she physically could not do it. And especially in a rehearsal setting where she might have had to do that section multiple times in a row, it's just not sustainable. It's definitely something that you need to be very, very careful of. And I think it's fair for a performer to tell you, no, I cannot do this. This is too much. And if you are a composer, I think you are obligated to listen to your performer when they say that this is physically too taxing. There are lots of things that I'll say no to that another performer will say yes to. And if that performer is willing to take that physical strain on, then fine, that's their choice. But also you need to respect your performer's choice to maybe not do that. If they are not comfortable doing that many in a row, if they are not feeling well doing that many in a row, know that, hear that, and adjust. Do not put your performer in physical pain just because you like the sound. The last thing is be wary of specific pitches or wanting specific pitches to speak within a jet whistle. You can ask for a certain bass note to be the fingering for the jet whistle, but it's not guaranteed that that note will sound within the jet whistle. And also keep in mind that the lower the fingering, the better it will sound, because the air is going to travel faster, longer down the tube. So you're gonna get more of that whooshing sound. So if you really want these true jet whistles, like low B, low C, low D are the best fingerings to use because it closes off most of the tube. You can do them on C5, but it doesn't really sound that great, and it's a lot of effort for not a lot of payoff. So yeah, I think the basics of jet whistle are, they're pretty inflexible, they need setup time, they sound better when they're lower, and do not kill your flutist. Please do not kill your flutist. I hope you found this video helpful. If you like it, give it a like. If you're new here, subscribe. If you want to support me more, check out my Patreon, and I will see you guys very soon. And also in that video, I mentioned that in the